Yeah, here they come. So good.
I feel like Zoom should have some lobby music or elevator music while everyone waits.
It's not a bad idea.
That's a good idea.
There's nothing stopping you guys from singing.
Yes, there is.
There are many things stopping me.
Common decency.
We want people to stay on the call.
We see that number drop significantly.
So Sarah, when we start, I just start in, or is there anything I have to do?
So that, you know, everyone can hear you now. When you start, you're just gonna get started.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
And it's Friday, so this will be a great way to end the week.
Yeah, we have found that the Friday, you know, either 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock are really good times for people, which I'm somewhat surprised, but I think when people go back to their offices, that'll change. But since most people are still working from home, or a lot are, it's been a very productive and popular time.
We had a call last Friday, and it's one about payments, and we get a really big crowd, and I had several texts beforehand that said the only thing keeping between me and a long holiday weekend is this webinar, so y'all get it going. You got it, yeah. It's like, let's move.
I just wanted to know where someone was going on the long holiday weekend.
Yeah, what is my backyard or whatever, there's all kind of Lowe's backyard, like all these islands that people are coming up with.
So I read something today about some creative ways that brick and mortar retailers are trying to reach out to the customers to make them feel safe coming to their stores or their shopping centers. So a mall in Thailand actually installed foot activated elevators. So people don't have pedals. So you would press a pedal for a floor as opposed to having to press a button on the elevator so people don't, you know, touch surfaces and things like that, which I thought was a pretty cool thing to have happen. And, you know, there were some other things that when they opened up Shanghai, 55 retailers got together and basically did a Prime Day. Only they did like a Prime Month where they had new product introductions and they had, you know, different discounts on different days, and, you know, they pulled all of their stuff together. They did $2 billion in the first day of this.
That's a great idea.
It is a great, and I was thinking you could do that at a property, especially if you had a portfolio wise.
Yeah.
Do Prime Day when you open back up on leasing, maybe waive application fees, whatever it would be, you know, something you could do with them, or, you know, kind of thing. So
I saw a story this morning on the Today Show about a sport event. I think it was a soccer event where they piped in the fans from their homes so they could hear, the players were playing live on the field, and the fans could hear, I mean, the players could hear the cheers, they could hear the boos, they could, they set them up virtually. So if you're a season ticket holder, you could see a kind of what you saw from your seats, and then you could also be next to your other season ticket holders, your friends. It was insane what they had figured out. It took them several weeks, but they said that a lot of the sports teams are now trying to figure out if they can use that technology. That's, you know, that's the highlight of this, is going to be how resourceful we are, right?
Right, but it also creates tremendous opportunity for innovation and creativity, right? Because you really can be ahead of the curve on this. So, it is 1:03, and I think it's time for us to get started. I'd like to welcome, first of all of the participants who are attending our Best Practices for Virtual Leasing webinar. There are more than 350 of you who have registered for this session. And I, first of all, want to thank you for giving up your valuable time to spend with us. And I also want to very much thank our speakers today from Entrata, Virginia Love, and from Realync, Matt Weirich. This is a complimentary webinar, and the reason why this is complimentary, there is no charge, is from the great support PMA receives from its platinum sponsors, Tepfer Construction and Inner Solutions, and its 5-star sponsors, American Pest, Capital Canopy, TRC Engineering, Electronic Security Services, Findlay Asphalt, Multi-Housing Depot, Residency Bureau, Alpest Prevention, Minkoff Company, and Hawkins Electric. These are companies that do more than talk the talk. They walk the walk. They support our industry. They support you. And if you can see fit, we would very much encourage you to support them. Just one brief announcement. We'll wait to do questions at the end so we can make sure that both Matt and Virginia can get through their presentation, use the chat function and Q&A function for this. And with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Matt to begin his presentation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you everyone for hopping on. Super excited to talk through virtual leasing with everyone today. This has been quite the hot topic over the last few months, and one that is getting a lot of movement, a lot of attention, and where are we going? A lot of attention, and is more relevant than ever for our industry, and also a very broad topic as well. And so two-part conversation here between myself and Virginia Love, Virginia is always a blast to do something like this with you. So super
This is going to be great.
Absolutely. Hopefully I'll be able to bring the energy with you. But so really part one, you're stuck with me. I'm going to be diving through more of the nuts and bolts, tactical, what is virtual leasing? How is it defined? What are the various approaches, technologies, considerations, and all of that? And so for this first part, let's dive right in, because there's going to be a lot. I'm going to be talking very fast, so hang with me and we can dive deeper into Q&A at the end. But in defining virtual leasing, it's pretty broad. It's touring and leasing using technology as opposed to in person. And so this can describe anything from pre-recorded video tours to live video tours to 3D and 360 virtual tours to the touchless in-person on-site tours, everything. So a very broad category that is new and being defined. And is someone else controlling the screen, by the way? Is that you, Tom, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, the slides are going, but that was perfect timing, whoever changed it. So the big consideration, though, across all of these virtual leasing categories, no matter what you're using for virtual leasing or considering using, this is about getting leases. So traditionally, when we were talking about virtual touring and virtual technology, 3D, 360, it was primarily in that marketing bucket. And today's conversation, this is about getting more leases and getting people in the door, converted, and signed on the dotted line. This is not about creating content that is just go sit on a shelf, sit on your website and collect dust. This is active, this is proactive, and it is meant to keep your team central in those conversations and interactions with your prospective residents. All right, come on now. Maybe.
There's just a little bit of a delay on it.
Yeah. Watch me go forward like 5 slides now.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe. We'll see if it sticks. I maybe jump in another side real quick. But when it comes to virtual leasing, the why, obviously don't have to linger on this. Everyone understands why we need virtual leasing now more than ever. It was an overnight switch for the industry. And some of these stats from Zumper that they've captured over the last few months really show the importance of virtual leasing for your teams coming out the other side of COVID as well. It wasn't a Band-Aid fix, it's a transition in the industry. So if we look at this first chart and this first, these stats from Zumper, what are the biggest challenges that consumers looking for apartments and homes are experiencing? 50% of people said their biggest challenge is not being able to see the apartment. And diving deeper into that, there was a full report from Zumper that was actually defined as seeing their exact apartment. And so that's one of the biggest considerations is going unit specific and floor plan specific with your virtual leasing efforts. Don't rely on just the model unit anymore. People want to see the exact space that they could be living in. A little further down there, 22% said matching picks. Again, they're picking up on if you show them something that is a representation of where they could be living, but it's not the exact thing, consumers are picking up on that. So the number of virtual tours, accuracy, and unit-specific content is more important than ever and is one of the biggest concerns and considerations that consumers are thinking about when looking at virtual leasing technology. On the flip side of that, come on now, I'll figure this out at some point. So in looking at the number one biggest thing that has changed for consumer search due to COVID-19, they're looking for more virtual tours. 34% of consumers said overnight that is the number one consideration that they are now looking for with virtual leasing and when looking for a place to live. And so if your community isn't equipped with those, it may leave consumers looking for other options because we know just how many consumers are starting their search online. So being able to meet them there with what they're looking for is super important. And one final stat for you here, when we look at the tour preferences, there's still 50% of the industry, despite COVID, that is comfortable coming in person, but your processes, your state may not be able to facilitate that yet. And so even if you can, 43% of your audience now prefers to tour virtually. So let's definitely look at the options and what you can do for connecting with those prospective residents, showcasing your space, and getting deals done. So as I mentioned already, lots of options out there. You can lean on pre-recorded video tours that are unit specific, show someone what they want to see. You can hop on a live video tour, or you can do 3D, 360 as long as you have certain considerations in place. And there's a lot of technologies out there. This is just a quick sampling of some of the options. Teams are using FaceTime, Zoom, do-it-yourself options, Skype, Matterport, Virtual APT, Realync, video leasing solution, and many others. And so as we dive a little deeper into this, we'll be talking about and covering some of those. But before you identify the technology that you're going to use, you need to have your approach laid out. You need to look at your team, your market, your consumers, your audience of prospective residents, and you need to look at what their preferences are, what your team can handle, and what your technology can support, and be willing to invest in a process and a playbook. One of the biggest things that you need to set up on the front end is that process. How are you going to make sure that everyone on your team follows the same process and procedure on this? How are you going to make sure that it still abides by fair housing and ADA standards? How are you going to track this? One of the big things about virtual leasing is tracking the success of it. Is it actually getting competitive conversion rates? Are you getting the results that you need to see? Being able to track and invest the proper processes, procedures, and technologies are going to be one of the defining factors to set up your team for success with virtual leasing. And real quick on the front end, some myths. While it may seem daunting and scary to pick up a phone and do a live video tour if you've never done it, don't worry, everyone is there. Not many people have done that before. This is new for everyone. And so we're in the same boat, and consumers are very understanding of that. So a couple myths. You have to be tech savvy to be good at video. False. Scroll Facebook and you're going to see the majority of your Facebook feed is video shot on an iPhone. It's what consumers are used to today. It's what they're engaging with, and people FaceTime and Zoom more than ever before. So don't worry about having to be tech savvy. A little practice and you'll be able to get it. Having to have a steady hand for the video to look good. While yes, to a certain extent, steadiness is very important, there are also best practices and things that you can put in place to alleviate that. Call it an anti-shake gimbal, or use an iPad instead of an iPhone, because holding an iPad with two hands really helps. Or stop walking and just stand and pan. There are a lot of tips and tricks that we'll cover that can help run you through all that. You have to be in the videos. No, you don't. Consumers are looking to see the space. And yes, it is great to have you in front of the camera to narrate and add a face to it and humanize the message, but not necessary. This will take forever to learn. No, it won't. If you've done FaceTime, if you've ever shot a video on your phone, you're halfway there. And so more than anything, just practicing and putting it into play will be the best thing to get you going. And then not having time to make the videos. If you have time to lease, you should make the time to find the videos. And it's the perfect transition into why pre-recorded video and how pre-recorded video can work for your virtual leasing efforts. So first off, when it comes to pre-recorded video for virtual leasing, a lot of options. You can do it yourself, pull out your iPhone or smartphone or tablet and just shoot a video. There are a lot of different apps that you can download, iMovie or other video editors, or there are built for multifamily solutions like Realync's pre-recorded video creator. Show My Property has stood up some support for DIY videos. And I'm sure you've probably worked with videography agencies in the past as well. So a lot of options to make pre-recorded video work for you. But if you're going to do it yourself and empower your team to do it, a few quick tips. First, invest in the accessories. So seen in that picture there, very affordable accessories that you can use with a smartphone to really take the quality up to the next level. That handheld battery operated anti-shake gimbal in the picture is actually called the DJI Osmo. And we can definitely message about that if you want. But if you just search anti-shake gimbal on Amazon or on the web, there are a lot of options. The biggest consideration there is the weight. If you have a plus size device, make sure the gimbal that you get can handle the weight of your phone. So make sure to check that as one of those key considerations. And then that little Pixter clip-on lens is actually really helpful as well. It's a clip-on wide angle lens that opens up the viewing area and helps better capture the space. You can use that to minimize panning, better showcase all that your unit has to offer, and showcase it in its best light. Speaking of best light, turn ceiling fans on. Turn ceiling fans on, put the toilet seat down, turn all the lights on, open the blinds, make sure that your unit is staged just like it would be if you're touring it in person. Just because it's virtual doesn't mean it has to be any different than an actual in-person showing. And one of the biggest considerations with maximizing lighting, when you're recording a video, keep natural light behind you. If you pan towards a window, you're going to get lens flare and everything else in the shot's going to go black. And so some little tips and tricks like that, where if you practice, you'll pick those things up. Speaking of tips and tricks, limit your walking. If you're creating a unit tour of a unit, pick your shots, and instead of constant movement and always walking and panning, slow down, stop, stand in the corner, and take a slow pan of the space. For this pre-recorded video, your audience needs to be able to digest what they're seeing. So slow down, stand and pan. If you're worried about shake, go shoeless. It's a little tip and maybe weird, but that can actually really help smooth out the video. Avoid the 360 pan. Don't just stand in the middle of the room and spin around. Makes people dizzy. Doesn't help capture the space. So find your corner, find your pan point, And if you feel like you're going slow, I'm going to tell you, go slower. For a pre-recorded video, the best thing to showcase your space in the highest quality light is going to be going slowly. The camera is going to have the best ability to adjust and capture the space, but it's also going to give your audience time to digest everything that they're seeing. And finally, with mirrors, if you can't avoid yourself in the mirror, embrace it, smile and wave. They're going to meet you at some point anyways. So finally, after you're done recording, if you have an app to do some finishing touches and edit it, that's great, but don't feel like this needs to be overly produced. The consumer wants to see that real, raw, transparent look into the space, and a self-shot video by a leasing agent is all it takes anymore. Consider fair housing and ADA. This is much like any other in-person tour. The biggest thing with fair housing is consistency across all of your touring experiences. And I think Virginia may touch on fair housing a little later as well, so I won't dive too deep into it, but consistency across all tours is going to be the #1 biggest consideration there. Cloud-based as well. If you have the ability to upload your videos to a cloud-based folder for sharing, it's going to remove 90% of your issues with getting that content out there to your audience. Sending a large file type or a video file is one of the hardest things you can do. So make it cloud-based. So real quick, if you want to see some quality examples of pre-recorded videos, pull out your smartphone. This is something not a lot of people know actually. Most all smartphones today have a built-in QR code scanner. So if you want to open the camera on your phone, just hold it up to this QR code. You'll see a little drop down at the top with a link to a playlist of videos. And this can be a quick way to run you through some examples of what teams have shot on Realync in particular, and give you some of those tips and tricks for what you can do. All right, we're flying through two more practical ways to make virtual tours work for you before I set Virginia loose on you. So live video tours. This is probably the fastest growing segment of virtual leasing because it keeps the leasing team central in the conversation. And we at Realync have actually produced a lot of reports over the last few weeks about how important that human element is right now. So being able to keep your leasing team front and central in those conversations with prospective residents is what is giving people trust in that virtual process. And it's helping to lead to increased conversion rates, decreased sales cycles, and lots of favorable stats because you can't Photoshop live video. And it allows the consumer to almost be in the driver's seat as well. If you try to hide something or not show something, they're going to call you out on that. They're going to say, hold on, can you go show me that real quick? And so it's the most real, raw, transparent look into the space outside of that consumer physically being there. So when it comes to live virtual tours, live video tours, things like that, FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, Realync, a lot of different solutions from DIY to built for multifamily. And again, you're gonna have to look at your tech stack, what you can support and what you want your processes to be, but also look at your consumers and look at what technology they have as well. So some quick stats about that human element that we've found. 42% of Americans are socializing virtually. They're doing virtual happy hours. They're on Zoom. It's what people are used to today. And so using it for an apartment search is not unfamiliar to them anymore. And again, that stat's actually from the Zumper information before, but 43% of consumers are desiring this sort of experience now for virtual leasing. And the crazy stat on Realync, Realync's been around for 6.5 years. We were a little early to the game on the virtual leasing and have been working with the industry for a long time on this. But over the last 2.5 months, we've seen a 15,000% increase in the volume of live video tours happening on our platform. And so just some key elements showcasing that how important keeping your leasing team involved in that leasing process can be. So again, some tips and considerations if you're going to go live with your virtual leasing efforts. Before the tour, I cannot reiterate this more fervently. Test your connectivity. One of the biggest things that our team gets contacted for is the tour dropping off, losing connectivity, that is the number one thing that will typically go wrong in your live virtual tour. So test before you go. Realync actually has a built-in speed test, or you can download the speedtest.net app. Just walk through your space and test your connectivity on Wi-Fi, on LTE, whatever your options are, but also practice with your team. If you don't have full confidence in the connectivity throughout, have someone in your office join that tour with you, walk your tour path, and see what that quality of the live stream is going to be. Also, charge your battery. Live streaming eats up a lot of battery. It's an innate result of going live, but just make sure your device is charged. You don't want to be stuck with a dead device and having to sprint back to the leasing office to try to call them and apologize. Ask your consumer about their preferred connection. If you just default to FaceTime, that's excluding Android users. They cannot join a FaceTime tour. So make sure you have options that are device agnostic, and just ask your audience, ask your prospective resident what their preferred means would be. And if you can, find a platform that does not give out your personal phone number. That is a 101, and there are definitely options and ways to avoid that. During the tour, again, treat it like an actual tour. Make sure your space is prepped. If you want, team up. Have someone holding the phone and you be in front of the camera. Or just go, if you're going yourself, go slow and flip the camera around on yourself to add that face-to-face interaction before diving into the unit. Just make sure more than anything that it's a humanized approach and that you're making that and establishing that connection with your prospective resident. And finally, take notes. Be able to follow up accordingly with your prospect and follow up immediately. Don't treat that virtual tour any differently than an in-person tour. Still do the same follow-up. And kind of harkening back to the pre-recorded videos, if you have pre-recorded videos of amenities or something that you didn't show, send that as a follow-up. It's a great engaging way to connect with them. And finally, last topic, and then it is V-Love's show, 3D and 360 tours. So many options from DIY with Insta360s, Ricoh Theta, things like that, or industry tried and true platforms, Matterport, Virtual APT, Zillow has a 3D offering. So many options out there to create your own 3D and 360 tours. And really the biggest considerations here, because they don't necessarily have that human interaction and element, just make sure that you have coverage. Like we mentioned on those Zumper surveys, people want to see their exact unit. And so try to at least have 3D or 360s of every floor plan available if 3D and 360 is the path that you want to go. But also look at the accessibility. If they're only going to be sitting on your website, look at what that communication path looks like. If you're going to say, yeah, you can take a tour of this unit here, and make sure that you understand if it works on all browsers, on all devices, and things like that. And then finally, integrations and trackability. Make sure that you can prove your ROI on it. If you send someone to your website to experience one of your 3D tours or take a look at multiple of them, are you going to actually know if they engaged in that or not? So make sure you have actual tracking and data to be able to follow up accordingly, because again, you need to follow up after a tour. And so don't treat 3D and 360 or any of these virtual leasing options any differently from what you would normally do from a touring standpoint. So I can go ahead and skip this one. If you want proof of the success of virtual leasing, there's plenty that we can prove and provide from both quotes, success stories, metrics, data, all of that. But to really sum things up, virtual leasing is all about leasing and connecting with your prospective audience. It's about effective communication and doing so efficiently. Virtual leasing should not be any less efficient than in-person touring. And if anything, because you're removing the need for that person to physically come to the property, it should be more efficient for your teams. So again, consider the process, consider the platform, the technologies, and just make sure that your team is all on board to do this in the same manner, sprinting forward. So that was crazy fast, a lot of information, but I appreciate the time to run through it. And it is Virginia, it's your show.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Really great information. Thanks so much. And it's cool because all the things that you're talking about from like sort of a hardware technology standpoint, what I have is some information about the way to strategize with it, with leasing, with marketing, getting your folks. It is leasing. There's a little bit difference to it, a little bit different pattern to it, and a little bit different strategy for the leasing folks. So I think this information together is going to be fantastic. Let's see, it says it now. It says I can control the screen. Let's see if I really can. How do you, what was your secret? Let's see. Aha. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to keep my fingers off of as much as I can. So yeah, let's get back into some of the best practices for virtual leasing. And like Matt said, I mean, for bang for the buck, video has always been a huge, huge value for marketing. We were big fans. I was a customer of Matt's in my former life before I joined Entrata, in full transparency. And it's, again, the videos, what's so great about it is, you just heard Matt talk about the different ways that you can do it. You can do it live, you can do it recorded, you can do a virtual tour, you can put them on a library. His point, I'm just sitting here nodding my head that folks don't want to see something that's just all professional all the time. They actually like that stuff that's more organic, that looks like someone just got out there, shot it. And that's really, really good for your SEO, because your search engine optimization, because the more video you have in your channel, like in your YouTube channel for your property or your company, the better that's going to be. Google owns YouTube, right, Matt? So why would they not like it? So we're going to go through some of my tips and tricks that we're going to go through today. I can't tell if I'm driving this or not. Anyway, okay. So we're going to talk about some stuff like customer journey disrupted, one thing that we're going to talk about today. Information gathering process for your sales folks, very, very important. We're going to talk about selling the dream from a distance. Again, we're leasing, but we're doing it a little bit differently. We're going to talk about how to spread the word about the information and about how you're doing virtual tours. And then I have a bonus slide. I threw in at the last minute. Love a bonus slide. Really cool. This is a sign that a neighborhood in my near me in Atlanta, they did some blank bootlegs and had all the houses fill out what they were thankful for. I thought that was just too sweet not to mention here. So okay, let's get going. So the one thing that I want to make sure that I mention to you guys is that in Entrata, we are all working from home. Everybody, me, Kim Adams, everybody in Utah, everybody in Dallas, everybody in India. And if you'd like to follow what it looks like for us to work from home, you can follow the hashtag Entrata WFH. But if you need us, we are available with all various and sundry backgrounds like everyone else in your space right now. So let's get going. Technology, it's fun when it works, right? Okay, whoop. Okay, all right, a little slow. Matt, I'm learning from you. It's a little slow, but I'm getting it, right? Anyway, so one of the things that Matt talked about was about relationships and making a connection. And that is what this is all about. And you can do it virtually. You don't have to be sitting next to each other. And one thing that I like to do when I do a webinar is I like to go through and kind of talk about what connects us. We've got to remember, we're in a very, I hate the word, I'm over the word unprecedented, but guys, it's the only word that really works. We've never been through this before. So it's important that we all remember that sales, even virtually, is about building a relationship. So I wanted to go through some of the things that connect everybody through COVID. So one of the ones was Tiger King. These are all things that we're all talking about. Tiger King, if you haven't watched it, I know you know somebody has watched it. Banana bread, little known fact, I like to make it, I don't like to eat it. Another thing, a quarantini, I'm all in, thumbs up. Let's have 100 of these once we're all back to normal, whatever that looks like. Let's all get together for a couple of those quarantinis. Matt mentioned the Zoom cocktail parties. It was one of those things that I loved at the beginning and now I'm kind of over. But at the beginning, it was a lot of fun, right? So, but that came out of nowhere. Homeschooling. I don't have any children. Those of you with children that are having to do work and school from home, I just cannot even imagine. But I have a really good friend who early on said, congratulate my kids, they've graduated. I'm not doing this anymore. She's just like, they're smart enough. So I thought smart enough was going to be her theme for the whole COVID-19. Organizing, this is my jam. I've organized, reorganized. OCD is real. And it's one of those things that the Container Store is showing record sales. They're doing curbside pickup. They're still doing shipping. But their sales are unbelievable. They've run out of product and they're like, it's better than Christmas over here. So, and I know that because I go through the one in Buckhead in Atlanta about 3 times a week. Another thing, puzzles. There was a while that you couldn't even find one. People are doing puzzles like crazy and sending them and sharing them throughout the country. I have a good friend on the West Coast that someone sent her one, just the puzzle pieces in a bag with no picture. It's like, that's tough, right? Another thing that connects us is not knowing what day it is. This is all the same thing that all the prospects are going through too. Everybody that you're talking to can't remember what day it is. It's all starting to bleed together. We're getting a little bit on the downturn, so I think that's feeling a little bit better. Everybody who has a dog and is working from home, the dog is so happy to have you at home. Oh my gosh, people are freaking out about what's going to happen when I go back to work and I have to leave the dog. But guess what? The cat's not happy. Cats want you out. There's a whole Instagram page about mad cats during COVID, and they just keep walking by people and just growling at them because they're so tired of them being in the house and they want the house to themselves. Just a few more. Missing sports. This is my jam. Again, I miss the sport things. I watched every minute of the draft. I watched the golf tournament this weekend with Tiger Woods and Tom Brady. I can watch all the sports that I want. I've missed the live sports. I've rewatched every possible game that I'm interested in. So this is something I think that really connects us and connects people regionally, and it's a hot topic. Things are coming back, so fingers crossed we pull that off. And last but not least, emptying the dishwasher. It feels like Groundhog Day every day, and that's because we're all cooking more and doing more. So a couple of things that I hope that resonate with everybody. So when we're talking about things about the customer journey is disrupted, again, virtual leasing is leasing. And about 2 seconds after we all went into shelter-in place at Entrata, we got bombarded with how do we do this? Can we do this? Where do we put it? Where can we put a video? And we've got all these videos. We have our people out running around doing videos like mad before we close the office. What are we going to do with all this content? And we went from what I would say was like a shift from why do we need to do it to a how, and Matt hit on this. Everybody went from, oh, you know, video, we need to have it. It would be nice. We don't have time. To all of a sudden, it was a priority, right? So time is a luxury. It's a luxury that we have to remember. And at the beginning of COVID, we didn't have any time. We all pulled this off in no time flat. Now we have the luxury of time to learning how to perfect things, what we're going to do with this content past COVID-19, and how we're going to make this process part of our marketing plans going forward. The other thing I think is really cool about this is it's a consumer-driven solution. Realtor.com reported that on March 15th, this is early on in COVID, they had an 80% increase in requests for people that wanted a virtual tour. Just 1 week later, and it was 494% in requests for a virtual tour. That's insane. They're not even tracking it now because now it has become a standard. It is not a, you know, it's not a desire and a request. Now it is something that you have to have. The first thing I want to make sure that you look at is that you evaluate those steps in the process. When we talk about the customer journey goes like this. They move in, they pay rent, they move out, right? That's kind of it. What happens when they pay rent is the real journey. What we're talking about is the top end of the funnel, is when they're trying to move in, the virtual tours. But folks have used these tours past that. We have clients doing virtual move-ins, virtual move-outs, doing showing service requests virtually. Hey, this is where the problem is, you know, so they can explain it better, because a lot of people went to only do an emergency service request and they weren't going in doing everyday things. Rangewater is a company out of Atlanta that is a client that's done a great job filming their service guys doing some just everyday service requests and loading them up to their YouTube channel and to their social media. But the one thing that you have to be able to do is you have to evaluate your steps in the process. It's a little bit of a different process than regular leasing. So if you think that whole they move in, the top end of the funnel is going to be the same, it's not. You have to make a lot of different adjustments to making this work. I love the point of Matt talking about a connection, about having the stabilizer bar. That is huge. It makes everything look a lot less, you know, Blair Witch Project, for those of you that remember that movie. And then the last thing that we want to make sure that we're talking about is one of the recommendations that we made early on was to soften your calls to action on your website. Instead of lease now, because people go, I can't leave my house. How am I going to do it? And they're adding things like virtual tours. We were having things like take a tour or next steps, visit us virtually. You can soften those call to actions on your website, and that'll make things, you know, more relatable to your client. So talking about that stabilizer, that thing, and I know that Matt, we had a couple of requests for you to share the specifics again, what you said, so we'll get that to everybody. So we'll have that information to everyone. The most important step in leasing, really more important now that it's virtual than anything. It's not closing, it's not follow-up, it's not making sure you're answering the phone. It is gathering that information gathering process. The problem is with the information gathering process is that's the part because salespeople want to rush through it. They want to get to the unit. They want to start the tour. They want to get the phone on and do the virtual tour. Gathering that detailed information is going to tell them where to go, where to start, what they need to be focusing on. It's not always the same thing. They don't have to go from the front of the apartment, like Matt was showing. You don't have to go from like living room to kitchen, kitchen to dining, dining to bedroom, bedroom to bathroom. You don't have to do that. They can start anywhere they want to. And if you do that detailed information gathering, what that's going to do is tell your folks what they want to be sold on. If they say things like, I got a lot of clothes, I need a lot of closet space. No sense in starting in the kitchen. You're going to get there. They're going to get to the kitchen. Don't worry about it. But if that was me and I was going to start a virtual tour, I'd be like, you know what? You said, Matt, that you have a lot of clothes. A lot of tennis shoes, a lot of clothes. You and your wife love to collect tennis shoes. Let's go and take a look at how many closets we have in this apartment. There's 5. And start and hit all of those closets. Then come back. That makes it interesting. It also says, you listened to me and what I wanted to see. Nothing's worse than having to look at something that you're not interested in first when you've told someone what they specifically want. And the way that you do that is you mirror by building that rapport. When you're sitting there and you're saying, remember when we talked about at the back of the office where we scheduled the virtual tour and I got all your information? Remember how you told me how much you needed some closet space? This is where you're going to meet someone exactly where they want to be met and sell them on what they want to be sold on. The other thing I always like to mention is you've got to talk about the holes in the process. One thing that you can find with virtual tours and this sort of new way of leasing is that folks, sales folks don't really like change. I know, hard to believe, right? Don't really love a lot of change. So one of the things they're going to do is they're going to look for ways that it's not going to, not just not going to work, but it's not going to be easy. They like things to be smooth. Why? Because they know that when things are smooth and they're prepared, they sell more apartments, they lease more apartments, they sell more video, they sell more software, everything. That's just a personality trait of all salespeople. So start looking for holes in those processes. One thing that we had a client do is they started virtual tours, and at the end of every day, they had someone who had held a virtual tour get on a phone call with a webinar or like a Zoom and talk about what went well and what didn't go well. Another client of ours, Amley, had paired them up in 2 different cities and go, okay, when they start practicing this, I'd get on the phone with Lauren in Chicago, and Virginia would be in Atlanta, and I'd give Lauren a tour, and Lauren would give Virginia a tour. I think that's a great idea. And then meanwhile, they recorded them so they can use them for later on. The other thing is it's all about enthusiasm. I did a test on one client asked me to call and find out, and the leasing consultant said, and I quote, "How about now?" Super accommodating, right? How about now? I'll get my phone, I'll call you right back, we'll do it this very second. I thought that was fantastic. You know why? Because that is when their buying temperature is so hot. You give them a little space in between, then they'll make some changes, they'll get busy, homeschool, go empty in the dishwasher, all of those things that we talked about. But the other thing that you've got to remember, if you're in the leasing space and you're talking about sales, is you've got to remember that you have to have that sales empathy. You know, a lot of times, in sales, you can't really hit them where you've always been. We have to acknowledge what the time that we're in. It's sort of like what I would call, probably the season of life. And when you have that enthusiasm, you're not exactly referring or reflecting where we are. That can get you in a little bit of trouble. So I'm waiting for the slide. I'll start talking about it. Maybe the slide will pop up. Let's see. Still on the same one. Anyway. Here we go. Very fantastic. Great. So sales empathy. Again, following up, mirroring that empathy, meeting people where they are and listening for those opportunities. The one thing that I've heard throughout this is people will say, "Hey, how are you doing right now?" The answer is the same. It's tough. It's hard. I've been at home. My family's not with me. I haven't seen my mother and stepfather since Christmas. My father has been ill, and this is not a good time to be ill. So there was a great article. It was on courtsatwork.com. I'm more than happy to send it to you. I'll give you my email address at the end. That said, how can you ask these questions in a different way? How are you taking care of yourself? Is a great question to ask. all this is, what has been the easiest part of the quarantine for you? Another really good question to ask. Everybody has an answer. What's something that you missed that hasn't been a surprise to you? You know, like, you know what, we kind of liked eating in. We've gotten used to it. We'd like to cook as a family, all of that kind of fun stuff. And what do you hope that we all learn and take away from this experience? Again, those shared experiences, an opportunity to connect. I think these are all good questions, like why you're on virtual tour. And like Matt said, when there's a little bit of time and you're just having a nice chat and you're not just talking about unit specific things, this is going to tell your customer that you have sales empathy and that you really care about what they're going through. Okay, so let's talk about selling the dream from a distance. You know, again, virtual leasing, still leasing. And what's really cool about this is you have an opportunity to sort of build a library of content right now, right? Matt discussed some pre-recorded tours of unit types. And this is what happened early on. People were like, okay, we got to get as many floor plans done as possible. And we want to get those specific floor plans. And my, you know, advice is to, like, you know, not only just get the specific floor plans that you need, but also plan those tours so you know what it is that you're looking at, plan those shots. The details matter. Show the cool stuff. Water pressure. Partner up. You do the camera, somebody else does the talking. But when you're showing that cool stuff, like look how the cabinets are adjustable. Isn't this cool? Look how you can have some storage over here under the washing machine. This outside storage space is perfect. You can hang a bike in here. Get really, really specific with the cool stuff. We had one, I have a good friend that's in real estate. He sold a $1.6 million house. And he did a virtual tour in Atlanta, and he said they wanted water pressure. He said, literally, I got under the shower with an umbrella and showed them water pressure. And I was like, good for you. And I guarantee you, the $1.6 million house buyers and the $1,200 rent payers probably are all very concerned about water pressure, right? We all are. I love Matt talked about a live open house. This is my jam. I think this is a great idea, whether you do it on Facebook Live or Instagram Live or over Zoom. This is an awesome idea that you can do where you can simply organize your leads in your CRM, whatever project or product that you're using, get them organized. Organize them by, you know, product type, like what kind of floor plan they're looking for, and by date. And you can have live open houses for those individual floor plans. Again, to Matt's point, a vacant, show them the actual unit. Hey, everybody looking for a one bedroom and you're trying to move in on the second week of June, look at this one, how great it is, and be in that one unit. And that way you're able to invite the masses, everybody that's looking for that floor plan for that time being. Schedule some reminders. I know in Entrata, we have contact points where you can pre-schedule it so people won't forget that we are offering this live open house. You know, take requests. Hey, we're going to be there in an hour. What do you want to see? You want to see Kim Adams get in the shower with an umbrella and see this and see the water pressure? We're up for it. Whatever it is that you're going to do, maybe you make some suggestions so people know what it is that you're talking about. You can have a group conversation, which is cool. People can go on and talk all together, which is great. And I saw there was another one, Matt, it was one of y'all's clients that I thought it was they had a let's make a deal. I think it was called the Remy. They did something like that, and they took had a phone number and took live text during it. That's super smart. One of the things that I asked Diogo, who is with our digital marketing team, to put me together just to sell the dream from a distance. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I'm going to hit on two that I think are super important. But to Matt's point of not having to have like something super valuable and super expensive, this is how you do it. There's the two things I want to look at. Is your video thumbnails matter? Look here, look down. Oh, ick, right? This one's better. Make sure that initial shot captures something that is attractive, because that's going to be what's resting on your channel and, you know, for posterity until you want to edit it, right? And last but not least on here is one thing Diogo said was video pre-roll ads on YouTube. This is maximizing that content for very little money. You've got the content now. Video ads are so cheap, tons of impressions right now that people are searching YouTube just like they search Google, apartments in Atlanta with city views. If you got an apartment in Atlanta with a city view, you better get a video of it, get it up on your YouTube channel, make sure that content is maximized. And, you know, for search, you can work with your SEO pay-per-click partner for that. But this is a great little quick, grab a phone, tell your story in 2 minutes, live stream it if you want to, organize your content, get those links once the post is completed, make sure your thumbnail looks good, share, share, share. You can put these things anywhere on a link. And then maybe talk to your partner about your SEO pay-per-click partner about buying some of those YouTube ads. They're very, very cost effective right now. So the other thing I wanted to make sure that I talk about while the slide's being frustrating, but anyway, there it is, yay, super excited, is spreading the word. We have got some clients at Entrata that have been genius at this. Very early on, one of the things that we talked about was making sure you got this information that you're offering virtual tours on your homepage of your website. And one thing that we suggested is that folks do a custom page on their website to where, just like in this page at the top, that banner that says get 2 months free on select 1 and 2 bedrooms, our team is available for virtual tours only at this time. They did a banner across. So a lot of folks are doing that, which is great, or doing some sort of call to action to get people to schedule a virtual tour. The other thing that you want to make sure you do, if you have a custom page, like maybe you did a COVID response page that tells all the things about your company, what your properties are doing for COVID, you want to make sure that you don't lose that. That is valuable content for SEO. Google loves that you have a specific page to your property. So plan on keeping that. Work with your partner and going, you know what? We're in a great area. I know we were talking before the start that Tom said that they had 120 restaurants around their office. If that was a property, that would be a great custom page to have, right? That would be fantastic. Put it on social media, making sure that everybody knows that you're offering these virtual tours on social media. On your chat, you can actually include it in your chat message and say, hey, chat here or schedule a virtual tour and schedule a link out. A lot of folks doing that kind of fun stuff. Make sure the ILSs know, the internet listing sites, you can put it in that top part of your description. A lot of them, I know CoStar has done this, have made a lot of adjustments for offering virtual tours and tracking these things, because they know that this is going to be something that when we all go back and go, okay, we spent a lot of money on it. Did it make us anything? You know, they know that we want to track that. So make sure that you have it either in your descriptive paragraph, or you can have it as a bullet, or you can even put it, you know, somewhere in that top part of the header, depending on which source it is that you're looking for. I love the signage. I love the idea of having bootlegs throughout the property. If you're in a good, you know, a really great main drive where people are going all the time, to have, you know, tour us virtually is awesome. I think it's also very important that we make sure that we send it out like an e-blast to those folks that are in your CRM, all of your previous leads. I don't care if they're from a year ago. I would let everyone know that it's available. People's plans are changing because of jobs, because of things with school systems, and they're trying to get another school system. A lot of things are changing every day. Follow-up messages are another great way that you can do it. When you're following up, somebody said just a minute ago, you hire a arrow spinner. That's a great idea in front of your property. That's fantastic. Thanks for that suggestion. But have them in your follow-up messages when you're following up with each lead, is you can put a link in there and say, hey, I know you're looking for the 2-bedroom. You looked at the 2-bedroom. This is the video that I shot before. Or a lot of folks are recording their virtual tours to be able to share them with clients after the fact. I think that's fantastic. And then in referral messages, also important. People are still referring. We see that, or people in states that don't even allow a referral fee are still referring folks. So that is really good information for us as an industry. So, and we're frozen again. Hold on one second. Here it comes. I've got one more bonus slide that I want to share with you, okay? If it'll come up. Okay, here we go. So I think what's funny about all this is that we're all talking about this, things getting back to normal. I'm going to tell you, there's a new normal out there, guys. We're not going back to how we were doing everything as an industry or as a people. Like, I think about things like buffets, probably out, right? I mean, probably not doing those anymore. Things about going to those restaurants, have a big drink and everybody's drinking out of the same big vessel or big thing, probably not going to happen for a while, right? So one of the things that we've been focusing on at Entrata is we've been doing a ton of webinars, and we do one about rent payments. We do this rent payment webinar every other week, and we don't have it next week. It's after rents are due, so it'll be the week of the 8th. And we've seen some really cool stuff from this. A lot of people are starting to plan their COVID-19 exit. Not just how do we get the offices open, but what does the rest of the year look like? Okay, we need more leads. We don't need really more leads. We need better leasing. We have all these leads. What are we going to do with them? The ILSs are reporting, you know, really huge growth in leads. So, you know, we're seeing them come in through our leasing center, through our contact center. We've got a lot of leads, and what we say that they are all in like sort of this research mode right now. They're all kind of figuring out what's going to happen, because once they're able to do something, they want to have a decision made. So that top end of the leasing funnel is heavy, and it's starting to drip down into where people are filling out applications, getting approved through software, moving in, all that fun stuff. The other thing that I keep working with folks on is ways to improve their marketing plan for the end of the year. It is not about what happened in the first year. The story is going to be in 2020, part 2. The second half of this year is going to be while this really sort of defined us, this is where we're going to have to all hustle. Folks are already talking about how are we going to make up for the end of the year. This is kind of what we are seeing right now, is that we're seeing people say things like, what did I not have time for that all of a sudden I made time for? Matt, video. No one had a lot of time and a lot of resources for it. Now they're like, oh my gosh. And what if, God forbid, we have another phase of this in the fall? You got to be prepared, right? Ask yourself that question. Chat is another good one here. If you don't have someone else like a leasing center answering chat, and you've had people at your leasing offices taking on chat, you better make some plans to keep it, because it's a fantastic lead channel. And it converts better than phone or email, and not in volume, but in quickness. It's a fast way to get there, right? And then the other thing about keeping what is working, one thing that we talk about all the time at Entrata is, when we're on these calls, is that some of the stats that are coming out, how it's going to affect us as an industry. The U.S. News and World Report today reported that customer spending is down 13.6%, and that's a record. Personal incomes are up 10.2%. That's another record. And when you combine that with the fact that folks were saving about 7% of their income in March, and now they're up to almost 16%, and income people are saving their money. They are preparing, and folks that weren't prepared for this are preparing for maybe what the next steps look like. You know, one of the things that I think, and a friend of mine, Dennis Smiley, who I know many of you know that we talk about all the time, is what we would call like the Great Migration. This is the perfect storm for people to move. We've shown on our Entrata webinars that month-to-month leases are up. They're rolling every month. That that as an industry, partners are allowing folks just to stay where they are, shelter in place at the same rent. That's exactly what I would do if I were you too. But now all of a sudden you're increasing that option for people to move out, and increasing your availability and dropping your occupancy. So that's one thing that's out there. Concessions are growing. And I think the reason why concessions are growing mostly is because people are going, well, I got to get them in here. If I get them, I got to capture them. So they're offering their best offer is their first offer. Not a bad strategy. So if you compile all these things together, and you're able to also see that people are seeing like Zillow reported this thing, what they would call like the fantasy search. Folks are looking for homes that are twice more than what they can afford. Mortgages are low. All of these things are creating the perfect storm for folks to make a move. I predict that the part 2 of 2020 is going to be super busy. I don't think that's a bold prediction, Virginia Love, but I will also predict that I think that given the right tools, and we all are utilizing some of these things that we have learned through COVID-19 since March, and taking advantage of things like the virtual tours and all this additional content, and the way that we're able to get the site teams to do more, and to be present, and to not have to wait for someone to come in the door. They can capture them right where they want to on their phone with a virtual tour. That is what the rest of the year is going to be like. Not only the rest of the year, I think Matt's with me, it's here to stay. So the good thing about COVID for me is it has shown how important it is for the site teams to have the tools that they need to be successful. And this is just one of those many tools. So keep what's working. As Winston Churchill used to say, never let a good crisis go to waste. There's always something to learn, right? So we want to make sure that we're all walking away from this better than we started, and that we're all able to figure out this new normal and continually get used to all these new normals. And with that, I am done. Thank you, everybody. And my email address is at the bottom in case you want to get in touch with me. I'll be more than happy to share any information. And I know Matt would like to do the same.
Absolutely. I did not include a slide with my email address, but I just messaged it in the communication if anyone wants to reach out.
Well, I want to thank both Virginia and Matt for what was a truly outstanding presentation, filled with just great tip after great tip to respond effectively to the new abnormal, as we like to call what is going on. And that I agree that I think virtual leasing and virtual tours are something that is here to stay. We have learned how to deal with this crisis. And I will quote my favorite Winston Churchill quote. It says, when you're going through hell, keep on going.
Right.
So, and we've had a little bit of that too. I would ask the attendees who are still on, if you have any questions, to please type them in the Zoom webinar chat. And if we don't, I would just like to say a couple things about PMA. We are going to have PM Expo this year, which is the nation's largest one-day property management trade show, Tuesday, October 20, at the Gaylord at National Harbor. So keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye out on our website, pma-dc.org, and through our regular social media and association communications for upcoming webinars. Again, Matt and Virginia, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys were absolutely fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
We'll have you back. Thanks again. And everyone have a great weekend.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.